قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce our Shaikh, Dr. Abdul Bari, Fathullah, Hafizahullah. The Shaikh was born almost 70 years ago in the town of Daryabad in the district of Sanat Kabir Nagar in the province of Uttar Pradesh in India. He completed his studies in India from the Central University of the Ahle Hadees, Jamia Salafia Banaras, from which he graduated almost 50 years ago, upon which he was blessed with acceptance to the Islamic University of Medina Nabawiyya in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where he completed his bachelor's program almost 40 years ago. Upon graduation, he was granted acceptance to the master's program, where he attained his master's degree in Hadees and his sciences almost 35 years ago. Upon completion of his master's program, he was sent by the government of Saudi Arabia to the city of Shahama in the United Arab Emirates, a city near the capital city of Abu Dhabi, where he resided for 23 years, teaching and calling to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. During his stay in UAE, he taught important books of tafsir, hadith, hadith sciences, fiqh, principles of fiqh, and Arabic grammar. His students in the UAE spread all throughout the UAE and spread with them the da'wah, the call of the Quran and the Sunnah upon the understanding of the Salaf. While residing in UAE, he completed his PhD degree from the historical Delhi University in India, where he was granted his PhD degree in Hadith Sciences almost 12 or 15 years ago. Almost 12 years ago, he relocated from the UAE to the capital city of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, where he was appointed a professor of Hadith in the prestigious Imam Muhammad bin Saud Islamic University. After teaching in this prestigious university Hadith and his sciences for a period of 10 years, he was granted his retirement almost 2 years ago. In addition to his great efforts in teaching and calling to Allah Ta'ala, he has also established a great institute of Islamic learning in his town of Daryabad in India, which is known as Jamia Islamia Daryabad, the Islamic University of Daryabad, from which thousands of students have graduated over the last 30 years since its inception and continue to benefit until this day. After this brief introduction of our noble Shaykh, I will now present a summarized translation of his lecture which was titled the Ahle Hadees School of Thought, the four Madhahib, the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i and Hanbali Mazhab, and Taqleed, blind following a particular Imam. So I say, the Shaykh mentioned in his lecture that throughout history, beneficial and harmful movements have commenced and concluded in Islam. Some of them have wielded great influence over the caliphate and various Islamic governments, such as the influence of the deviant sect of the Mu'tazila over some of the rulers of the Abbasid Caliphate, which resulted in the trial and tribulation of some great scholars of Islam, such as Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah, who stood firm upon the truth in this trial while others could not. The Ahle Hadith Maslak is also a movement which aims for the following. Firstly, to return to the simplicity found in the tenets of creed and acts of worship during the time of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een and the first generations of Islam rahimahumullah. Secondly, to embark upon the middle path between extremism and leniency. Thirdly, to serve the various branches of knowledge related to the Quran and the Sunnah. Fourthly, to establish enjoining the good and forbidding the evil in all facets of life. An example of embarking upon the middle path between extremism and leniency found in the Ahle Hadith Maslak is the issue of Qiyas. Qiyas is one of the sources of Islamic law and jurisprudence, which is the process of deductive analogy in which the connection of something without a direct text from the Quran and Sunnah is made to its judgment by another textual matter with a judgment, by virtue of a shared cause between the two. This is the meaning of Qiyas. The Ahle Hadith Maslak embarked upon a middle path between extremism and leniency in this matter of Qiyas. Some of the other schools of thought went to extremes in Qiyas, which resulted in the abandonment of textual proofs and authentic ahadith, while in contrast, the Zahiri school of thought outright rejected Qiyas. For example, the Zahiri school of thought forbids urinating in stagnant water, in water that is still, in light of the authentic hadith which forbade doing so. But the Zahiri school of thought allows for defecating in this stagnant water, as this hadith does not make direct mention of it. Meaning, the hadith only forbids urinating in stagnant water and does not mention defecating in it. So, the Zahiri school of thought, by rejecting Qiyas, permitted defecating in stagnant water as the hadith makes no mention of it. And on the other hand, those who went to extremes in Qiyas permitted various types of intoxicants by way of it, which is found in their books of fiqh and Islamic jurisprudence. So it becomes clear that the middle path between extremism and leniency is of the Ahle Hadith Maslak, which did not go to extremes in Qiyas and forbade all types of intoxicants in light of the hadith in which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, all that which intoxicates is haram. And the Ahle Hadith Maslak also did not outright reject Qiyas by permitting defecating in stagnant water due to it not directly being mentioned in the hadith. Returning back to the various movements that have been found in Islam, generally movements come into existence due to certain temporary circumstances and events found in a specific period of time, and die off after those circumstances end. Even though some of these temporary movements took the shape of a continuous school of thought, a continuous school of faith and thought, due to various political and other influences, and brought along with them various forms of evil, innovations and misguidance, and unending hatred and splitting amongst the Islamic Ummah, such as the sect of the Rafida Shia and the Khawarij. In contrast, the Ahle Hadith movement is the true essence of Islam and is as old as Islam is. It is not a movement that came into existence due to temporary circumstances and events, and has been present in every period of time due to the thoroughness and universality of its methodology, its aim being serving Islam in its totality and safeguarding its true teachings from the misguidance and deviation of all the various temporary movements, such virtues which are not mentioned except for the scholars of Ahle Hadith. A great misconception is found among some people regarding the Ahle Hadith, who claim that Ahle Hadith is not a school of thought, rather it is just a terminology for the memorizers of Hadith and the scholars of the sciences of Hadith. There are only two reasons for this misconception: either ignorance or bigotry against the Ahle Hadith. In answering this misconception, we say that the memorizers of Hadith and the scholars of Hadith sciences have also been found in the four schools of thought, the four Madhahib, the Hanafi, the Maliki, the Shafi'i and the Hanbali schools of thought. The scholars of these Madhahib, these schools of thought, have presented great works in service of Hadith sciences and have also written explanations of various Hadith books. However, these scholars generally understand Ahadith and deduce rulings from them in line with their madhab and their school of thought, and one will sometimes even find sternness from them against their opposers from the other schools of thought. In contrast, the Ahle Hadith are not confined to the school of thought of a particular Imam, be it a layman from amongst them or a mujtahid scholar. The Ahle Hadith are not constrained to the rulings of a particular Imam. Rather, they provide proofs to the scholars of the other four madhahib, the four schools of thought. They ponder upon issues in light of the Quran and the Sunnah upon the understanding of the Salaf, and they are not concerned if they agree to or oppose any of the rulings of the Imams of the four madhahib. So, the Ahle Hadith is not just a categorization of the memorizers of Hadith and the scholars of Hadith sciences. Rather, it is a school of thought that follows specific principles in understanding proofs of the Quran and the Sunnah and deducing rulings from them. The Mujtahideen scholars are only two groups of people, either the Ahlul Hadith or the Ahlul Rai. The scholars of the Hanafi Mazhab, the Hanafi school of thought, are known as Ahlul Rai, who oppose the consensus and the position of the majority of the scholars by deducing rulings upon the principles and statements of their Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Then make qiyas upon those rulings, and they do not exert themselves in investigating the proofs of the Sunnah and the Athar in such rulings. Rather, they give no regard to the Hadith in the presence of qiyas in some instances, while the other mujtahideen, scholars of Islam, other than the Hanafi fuqaha, were all from the Ahle Hadees. However, their muqallideen and blind followers cannot be considered Ahlul Hadith, as no Ahle Hadith can be a muqallid. No Ahle Hadith can be a blind follower of a particular Imam. The Ahle Hadith deem the proofs of the Quran and the Sunnah along with the guidance of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum and the Salaf rahimahumullah to be a fundamental principle of the school of thought, and base their fiqhi rulings and deductions upon it, while the Ahlul Rai are confined to the principles of their specific scholars in deducing rulings instead of the Quran and the Sunnah. This establishes that the Ahle Hadith is not just a terminology for the memorizers of Hadith and the scholars of the sciences of Hadith. Rather, it is an old school of thought in contrast to the Ahlul Rai school of thought, which along with memorizing and preserving the text of the ahadith and its asanid, deduce rulings in creed and jurisprudence from them. The Ahle Hadith give no regard to the personal opinions of scholars, and therefore they did not design a confined fiqhi mazhab like the other four madhahib, so that the people do not start blind following it like the other madhahib, but they did show the ummah the approach of deducing rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah and utilizing proper qiyas in rulings, and presented the methodology of fiqhul hadith, the methodology of jurisprudence derived from authentic ahadith. Taqleed, blind following of a particular imam, has no place in the Ahle Hadith maslak, and most laymen deem the word Ahle Hadith and ghair muqallid, meaning the one who is not a blind follower of a particular imam, to be of the same meaning. This is especially true in the Indo-Pak subcontinent, in the countries of India and Pakistan, where the Ahle Hadith terminology is used in opposition to the blind followers of the four madhahib. But the fact of the matter is that the imams of these four madhahib themselves have opposed their taqleed, and many scholars, rather the foremost students of these four imams, have opposed some of the fiqhi positions of these madhahib based upon their research, all the while being counted as being part of that madhab. And this has not diminished their rank or become a cause for criticizing their religious stature. Even though the terminology of muqallid or ghair muqallid, meaning the one who is a blind follower or not of a particular imam, has been present throughout time, the muqallid terminology was not used as a praise, nor was the ghair muqallid terminology used as a critique in past times like they are being used today. Returning to the books authored on the biographies of the scholars tells us that there were several scholars in every era that did not blind follow a particular imam. Rather, they used to derive rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah, were known to be leading scholars of their generations, were well respected by both the scholars and laymen, and were not criticized and called names like our present times. Rather, they are remembered as Ahle Hadith. Some people claim that there is an ijma, meaning consensus of the scholars regarding the necessity of blind following one of the four madhahib, which is a false claim. Rather, what is factually true is that both ways of taqleed and not doing taqleed have always been found, and the followers of both ways have fluctuated based on their accessibility to knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah. Meaning, the more access the people had to the Quran and the Sunnah, the numbers of Ahlul Hadith increased and the number of the people of Taqleed decreased, and the more ignorance was prevalent, the numbers of the muqallidun increased and the number of the Ahl Hadith decreased. In conclusion, the Ahl Hadith Maslak is much older than the 4 Taqleedi Madhahib, the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i and Hanbali Madhab. It is present ever since the Hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been found on this earth, while the 4 Madhahib came to existence in the 4th century after the Hijrah, after the migration of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Mecca to Medina. And with this, the Shaykh concluded his beneficial lecture on the topic of the Ahl Hadith school of thought, the 4 Madhahib and Taqleed. And in conclusion, I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to bless the Shaykh in his time, in his health, in his wealth, and to accept his great efforts in spreading the Sunnah upon the methodology of the Salaf. And I would like to personally thank our Shaykh for giving up his precious time to present this knowledgeable lecture. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira.
وذكر فإن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون